Hej everybody, welcome back. Tack för sist, välkommen tillbaka. In my hotel room, so it's not the greatest setting, but what can you do? You go with what you got. Today, I want to tackle a topic that's a little unknown. That's probably a good word for it. Life after death. What comes next? I know there are plenty of people, including people I know personally and well and love and respect, that say they know exactly what's coming after this life. My dad, for one, he has zero doubts. I mean, he's just as sure as you can be. Which, I sometimes wonder what to think about that, because I have my ideas. It's more than an idea for me. It's a feeling that there's something beyond this. I don't know, part of it is logically, it doesn't make sense that we're here and then we're just gone. I had somebody pretty close to me a few years ago talk about being really scared of dying. And I said to them, I can say it. It was one of my sons, my oldest son. He had this really big fear of death. And this was when he was quite a bit younger. He's 31 now. This is when he was still probably a kid. And I said, I look at it this way. First of all, I believe there's something after this life, is what I told him. I think there's something really good after this life if you live a good life. And, excuse me, if you live a bad life, then maybe, I don't know, maybe it's not so good. In fact, I would hope that really crappy people, murderers, rapists, people that abuse kids, I hope there's at least some sort of punishment after this life for them. Whether it should be eternal, that seems not for me to decide, let's put it that way. But what I told them is, I believe there's something after this life, and I believe it's something good, because we're good people. We're not perfect. None of us are. I certainly am not. But I do try to live a good life, and I try to treat people right. And I said, I think that'll lead to something good. Excuse me. And I said, it's either that or there's nothing. And if there's nothing, then we're not going to know it anyway. It's not going to matter. It's just over. And I made it very clear that I don't believe that. I don't believe that at all. If I'm wrong, I guess it won't matter, right? But that actually freaked him out more. He said, that scares me even more, that there's nothing. And I said, but it won't affect you. It won't have any bearing on your being. And, I reinforced again that I really believe there's something good coming after this life. There have been experiences throughout human history, about people having near-death experiences, about seeing a light, a tunnel, being drawn to the light. Freaking allergies. And I just think there are too many, in too many societies, in too many cultures, across too many centuries and millennia, for it to just be written off as, I don't know, fantasy. I know when my father-in-law passed away several years ago, good guy. In fact, I thought he would be around forever. He was such a healthy, active guy. And he wasn't young when he passed away, but I thought he would live to well into his 90s. But I remember, as the end was coming near for him, he had experiences that made me think he was kind of seeing into the next life. I won't go into details about what he saw, or that's just not my place. I will say that my dad's still around, but when his mom died, she reached out for her husband. I'm pretty sure I have this story right. Right before she passed, like he was reaching for her, like he was calling her to him. And you know, there's a million stories like that out there. People that get in bad accidents and literally die for a while and come back and say, you know, I was hovering above my body, I could see my own body. I went to a place that was really peaceful and pleasant and beautiful. You know, growing up in the Mormon church, there were some pretty strong, at least in my realm, in the group I ran with and the church I went to, pretty strong opinions on this stuff. I mean, obviously the Mormon church believes in a life after this. They believe there was a life before this, that we were spirits that came and got bodies, and then that spirit will continue on after this. And I don't know if this was ever doctrine, so don't quote me as me saying that it is, because I'm telling you, I'm not sure. There are lots of things I talk about when I talk about the Mormon church where I'm like, I know this is right. This one I'm not positive about, but it was pretty widespread. And that was, obviously murder is the worst thing you can do. And they believe you go to a place, well, I'm not going to get into all that. That's not the point of this video. If you're interested in that, maybe I'll talk about that in a future video. Different places, different people go. But I was always taught that if you committed suicide, that was like murder, because you're killing yourself. And we were told stories, and I don't know if these are substantiated, if anybody else has heard these, but we had heard stories about people that tried to kill themselves and didn't die, but kind of went temporarily to the next place. For them, it was horrific. It was a horrible place. People that just died in an accident and then came back, or in the hospital and then came back, it was always like a peaceful thing. So obviously they were basically insinuating that if you kill yourself, you might not go to a great place, which, like I said, I don't know if that was ever doctrine, and I don't think it actually was, but it was something that was pretty widespread, and I don't like it. I don't think it's right. Now, suicide's a tricky subject. People obviously got to be in a horrible place to go to that place. Again, not the topic of this video, but I don't know that we should be judging people. I remember I had a dentist years and years ago. And if you live in the area I lived in, this was probably 20 years ago-ish. Pretty young guy. I think probably in his mid-30s maybe. Had a family with 2 little kids. And he ended up killing himself. And I remember this was very public because somehow his daughters, I think they were, I don't remember the exact ages, but young, like 4 and 6 or something like that. But they wrote letters to their dad who had moved on. And I do believe it ended up in like a newspaper or some public place where people could read it. And it was heartbreaking. I know when I went through my divorce, I mean, I've talked about the depression I had the first few months on my mission in Norway and how sad and miserable I was. When I went through my divorce, it was worse. And part of it was that my wife left. I mean, we were destined to break up regardless. She's a good woman. We were good friends before we got married. We just weren't right for each other. But sorry, I got to move here on the couch. I'm sitting right on the little frame. We just didn't fit. But nevertheless, we got married in the temple. I had made a vow. This was my eternal family, right? I was trying to be Mormon. And move on with them to the next life. So I went through a very, very deep depression. I've talked about it a couple times in videos, and I'm going to do it again because I think it's a really important video for anybody that's dealt with really serious, deep depression. Like I said, every time I do, I think I've done this video maybe 3 times in the last several years. And if it helps one person, and I know for a fact it did help one person, because somebody reached out to me. If it helps somebody, then it's worth it. If it's one person, it really is. But I was in a place where if I didn't have the religious beliefs I had, the spiritual beliefs I had at the time, let's just say I contemplated not being here anymore. What always saved me was my daughter. She was 4 or 5 years old, depending on the time. She was 4 when we got divorced, but turned 5 not long after that. And she was my whole world. She's still a giant part of my world. She's an amazing woman. She's an author. I am going to interview her on my channel one of these times because she's if you like Harry Potter, young adult fantasy kind of stuff, that's what she writes, and she's really good at it. She's got a trilogy. So I really want to get that out there. A, because I'm really proud of her, but B, because I think it's really good. I've read one of her books. I'm halfway through another one, and they're just good. So that's what kept me around. I mean, I don't think I could ever have done that anyway because of the way I was raised and what I was taught about that it was a really awful thing. But that's how deep in a funk and a depression I was. But it always came back to I could never do this to my daughter. And so when this dentist of mine killed himself, and I saw what it had done to his little girls and his family, obviously he was in a horrible, horrible place where he just couldn't deal with it. I wish somebody could have got to him and said, dude, it will pass. It will pass. Mine passed. I can't speak for everybody. I don't know what everybody's dealing with out there. But I'm convinced that almost everything, except maybe some extreme circumstances, you can get to the light on the other end. And I just felt so awful for this family. And part of the reason I'm talking about that is because what I was taught is that guy's going to a bad place. I don't believe that. I really don't. I think he's on the other side. Maybe he has to pay some penalty. Obviously I don't know how it works. I don't think anybody does. I know some people say they do. And that's cool. You get to believe what you want to believe. But I hope that many years from now, when his daughters pass on, sorry, I got a phone call coming in. I'm just going to hang up. That he'll be waiting for them and they'll be together. That's another thing I believe, even though I'm not part of the Mormon church anymore, is that I believe I'm going to be with my family after this life. Now, there's a lot of nuance to that. In the church, you have the celestial, terrestrial, telestial, celestial kingdoms. But there are also levels in the celestial kingdom. Now, people have argued with me on this point about if you really want to be at the highest point, you've got to be baptized, you've got to have an eternal marriage in the temple, you got to have the covenants, all of it. And you can argue with me if you want about that, but that's just doctrine. That's just church doctrine. I had my home teacher, excuse me, if you're not familiar with what a home teacher is, they're people from the church, 2 men, sometimes 2 women are called visiting teachers. They call them something different now. I'm not in the church anymore, so it's fine. I don't know what they're called now, but our home teachers would come every month. It was always the same dude. He actually stopped coming with another fella, and he would bring his wife or his family. But one time he was at my house, and I told him from the start, you're welcome to come anytime. I'm a friendly, neighborly guy. Let's be neighbors, we can talk. But we're not going to talk religion. We're not going to study scriptures. We're not going to pray. But if you want to stop by, great. And most of the time he was very respectful. But one time we were standing in my driveway. I've told this story before, but odds are you haven't heard it. And he's a little dude. I'm not a huge guy, but I'm not a little guy. I'm 5'10", 210 pounds. This guy is probably 5'6", 120 pounds. So compared to me, he's a very little dude. And that's kind of relevant here because we were standing in my driveway, and my driveway sloped, and I was towards the house. So I was even bigger than him because I was above him. And he looked at me real serious and he said, "Arl, don't you love your family?" I said, "What did you just say to me?" He says, "Don't you love your family?" And I'm like, "Be very careful." I won't use his name. We'll call him Bob. I said, "Be very careful, Bob." And he says, "Well, you know, if you don't come back to the church and if you don't do this and you don't do this, you can't be with your family." And I stepped towards him. I was pissed. I mean, I had no intention of hitting him, but my instinct was, you're talking about my family, dude. You're going to get your ass kicked. That was my instinct. I wouldn't have done it, but he stumbled backwards because he could see it in my eyes. I was very angry with him. And I stepped forward and said, "Don't ever talk to me like that about my family again. You don't get to decide what happens. It's not your call. And I believe I will be with my family." I'd love to hear, if you're comfortable sharing, if you've had some experience, a near-death experience or something where you saw beyond this. I mean, in the church, they call it the veil. We've got a veil between us and the spirit world, so we can't see through there. But occasionally people catch glimpses of it. I know I've known people that have felt like, my dad, his mom came to him after she passed. I mean, it was in a dream, but he said it was as real could be. I hope she's okay with this, but I know my wife has said that her dad came to her in a dream. Neither one of us are religious, but she believes in God, and I think she believes I know she believes in something after this. And she said the same thing. It was a dream, but it was as real as me and you talking right now. So I am convinced there's more, and I haven't had any real specific things. I've had things happen in my life that I can't explain. I've seen things, including, I've talked about my UFO experience. I've actually had a couple of them. I've had experiences out in the desert with seeing, not really sure what. But I feel like there's more. And I don't know, it's just my soul, something beyond me tells me that there is. You can call it the Holy Ghost, you can call it the Spirit, you can call it your conscience, your soul. I don't want to put a name on it for you because you might have your own name for it. So if you've got something like that you're comfortable sharing, I'd love to hear it. And in fact, if there's something that really grabs my attention, I've talked about that I'd like to do some interviewing. I got to figure out how to do it, how to get somebody else on the video with me. I'm not very good at you can see, I don't edit, I don't do squat. So I'd have to figure out how to do like a Zoom call and get both of us on at the same time. But if there's something really intriguing, I think it'd be pretty cool to interview somebody about something like this. So let me know what you think. I know it's kind of a broad subject, but I do believe it's something every human thinks about, even atheists. And I got no problem with an atheist. I say it all the time. If you treat people right and you don't hurt people, I respect your beliefs. You hurt people, you want to dominate people, you want to control people, that's when I have issues, and then I probably wouldn't get along with you. But yeah, let me know what you think. And thanks again for subscribing and watching and commenting and sharing and following. I'm having a good time with this. I'm sorry, I am pretty tired right now. I've been on the road for quite a few days now, and I put in 10, 11 hours every day, 7 days a week when I'm on the road. So I have all these big plans when I get back to my hotel, but then I'm just worn out, and I just want to put a movie on and do nothing. And I have all these plans, all these things I want to do. Sorry, this couch is kicking my ass, literally. So anyway, that's it for now. I'm looking forward to reading your comments and your stories. Don't be afraid to write a longer comment if you got some story. I read them all, at least I think I do. And if it's interesting, I got no problem reading a longer comment. So, tack för denna gång. Jag snackas igen snart. And thanks so much for watching, y'all. I gotta get off this couch. Peace. Love.